From the depths of the unknown, they emerged like a storm, sweeping across empires and leaving behind a trail of fire and fear. They were the Huns, and their leader, a man whispered of in terrified legend, Attila, the Scourge of God. Attila the Hun, born into a world in constant flux, inherited a vast but fragile empire. Yet, where others faltered, he thrived. With cunning and cruelty in equal measure, he forged a unified force from disparate tribes, uniting them under the banner of the Hun. Many scholars have argued that the name Attila derives from East Germanic origin. Attila is formed from the Gothic or Gepitic noun Atta, father, by means of Ila, meaning little father, compare Wolfila from wolves, wolf, and Ila, that is, little wolf. The Gothic etymology was first proposed by Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm in the early 19th century. Menschenhilfen notes that this derivation of the name offers neither phonetic nor semantic difficulties, and Gerhard Dorfer notes that the name is simply correct Gothic. His name became a rallying cry, and his armies, a tide of death and destruction that threatened the very foundations of Rome. The Huns were a group of Eurasian nomads, appearing from east of the Volga, who migrated further into Western Europe and built up an enormous empire there. Their main military techniques were mounted archery and javelin throwing. They were in the process of developing settlements before their arrival in Western Europe, yet the Huns were a society of pastoral warriors whose primary form of nourishment was meat and milk, products of their herds. The origin and language of the Huns has been the subject of debate for centuries. According to some theories, their leaders at least may have spoken a Turkic language, perhaps closest to the modern Chuvash language. Attila's father Munzuk was the brother of kings Oktar and Ruga, who reigned jointly over the Hunnic Empire in the early 5th century. This form of diarchy was recurrent with the Huns, but historians are unsure whether it was institutionalized, merely customary, or an occasional occurrence. His family was from a noble lineage, but it is uncertain whether they constituted a royal dynasty. As nephews to Rugila, Attila and his elder brother Bleda succeeded him to the throne in 435, ruling jointly until the death of Bleda in 445. During his reign, Attila was one of the most feared enemies of the Western and Eastern Roman empires. He crossed the Danube twice and plundered the Balkans but was unable to take Constantinople. In 441, he led an invasion of the Eastern Roman, Byzantine, Empire, the success of which emboldened him to invade the West. He also attempted to conquer Roman Gaul, modern France, crossing the Rhine in 451 and marching as far as Aurelianum, Orleans, before being stopped in the Battle of the Catalonian Plains. Attila grew up in a rapidly changing world. His people were nomads who had only recently arrived in Europe. They crossed the Volga River during the 370s and annexed the territory of the Alans, then attacked the Gothic kingdom between the Carpathian Mountains and the Danube. They were a very mobile people, whose mounted archers had acquired a reputation for invincibility, and the Germanic tribes seemed unable to withstand them. Vast populations fleeing the Huns moved from Germania into the Roman Empire in the west and south, and along the banks of the Rhine and Danube. In 376, the Goths crossed the Danube, initially submitting to the Romans but soon rebelling against Emperor Valens, whom they killed in the Battle of Adrianople in 378. Large numbers of Vandals, Alans, Suebi, and Burgundians crossed the Rhine and invaded Roman Gaul on December 31, 406 to escape the Huns. The Roman Empire had been split in half since 395 and was ruled by two distinct governments, one based in Ravenna in the west, and the other in Constantinople in the east. The Roman emperors, both east and west, were generally from the Theodosian family in Attila's lifetime. The Huns dominated a vast territory with nebulous borders determined by the will of a constellation of ethnically varied peoples. Some were assimilated to Hunnic nationality, whereas many retained their own identities and rulers but acknowledged the suzerainty of the king of the Huns. The Huns were also the indirect source of many of the Romans' problems, driving various Germanic tribes into Roman territory, yet relations between the two empires were cordial. The Romans used the Huns as mercenaries against the Germans and even in their civil wars. Thus, the usurper Jonas was able to recruit thousands of Huns for his army against Valentinian III in 424. It was Aetius, later patrician of the West, who managed this operation. They exchanged ambassadors and hostages, the alliance lasting from 401 to 450 and permitting the Romans numerous military victories. The Huns considered the Romans to be paying them tribute, whereas the Romans preferred to view this as payment for services rendered. The Huns had become a great power by the time that Attila came of age during the reign of his uncle Ruga, to the point that Nestorius, the Patriarch of Constantinople, deplored the situation with these words: "They have become both masters and slaves of the Romans." He subsequently invaded Italy, devastating the northern provinces, but was unable to take Rome. He planned for further campaigns against the Romans but died in 453. After Attila's death, his close advisor, Arderic of the Gepids, led a Germanic revolt against Hunnic rule, after which the Hunnic Empire quickly collapsed. Attila lived on as a character in Germanic heroic legend. In 447, Attila again rode south into the Eastern Roman Empire through Moesia. The Roman army, under Gothic magister Milidum Arnagisclus, met him in the Battle of the Utus and was defeated, though not without inflicting heavy losses. The Huns were left unopposed and rampaged through the Balkans as far as Thermopylae. In 450, Attila proclaimed his intent to attack the Visigoth kingdom of Toulouse by making an alliance with Emperor Valentinian III. He had previously been on good terms with the Western Roman Empire and its influential general Flavius Aetius. Aetius had spent a brief exile among the Huns in 433, and the troops that Attila provided against the Goths and Bagaudae had helped earn him the largely honorary title of Magister Militum in the West. The gifts and diplomatic efforts of Gaiseric, who opposed and feared the Visigoths, may also have influenced Attila's plans. However, Valentinian's sister was Honoria, who had sent the Hunnish king a plea for help, and her engagement ring, in order to escape her forced betrothal to a Roman senator in the spring of 450. Honoria may not have intended a proposal of marriage, but Attila chose to interpret her message as such. He accepted, asking for half of the Western Empire as dowry. Attila interfered in a succession struggle after the death of a Frankish ruler. Attila supported the elder son, while Aetius supported the younger. He gathered his vassals, Gepids, Ostrogoths, Rugians, Syrians, Heruls, Thuringians, Alans, Burgundians, among others, and began his march west. In 451, he arrived in Belgica with an army exaggerated by Jordans to 500,000 strong. On April 7, he captured Metz. He also captured Strasbourg. Other cities attacked can be determined by the hagiographic vitae written to commemorate their bishops. Nicasius was slaughtered before the altar of his church in Reims. Servetus is alleged to have saved Tondren with his prayers, as Saint Genevieve is said to have saved Paris. Lupus, bishop of Troyes, is also credited with saving his city by meeting Attila in person. Aetius moved to oppose Attila, gathering troops from among the Franks, the Burgundians, and the Celts. A mission by Avitus and Attila's continued westward advance convinced the Visigoth king Theodoric I or King Theodoric to ally with the Romans. The combined armies reached Orleans ahead of Attila, thus checking and turning back the Hunnish advance. Aetius gave chase and caught the Huns at a place usually assumed to be near Catilinum. Attila decided to fight the Romans on plains where he could use his cavalry. The two armies clashed in the Battle of the Catalaunian Plains, the outcome of which is commonly considered to be a strategic victory for the Visigothic-Roman alliance. Theodoric was killed in the fighting, and Aetius failed to press his advantage, according to Edward Gibbon and Edward Creasy, because he feared the consequences of an overwhelming Visigothic triumph as much as he did a defeat. From Aetius' point of view, the best outcome was what occurred. Theodoric died, Attila was in retreat and disarray, and the Romans had the benefit of appearing victorious. Attila returned in 452 to renew his marriage claim with Honoria, invading and ravaging Italy along the way. Communities became established in what would later become Venice as a result of these attacks, and the residents fled to small islands in the Venetian lagoon. His army sacked numerous cities and razed Aquileia so completely that it was afterwards hard to recognize its original site. Aetius lacked the strength to offer battle, but managed to harass and slow Attila's advance with only a shadow force. Attila finally halted at the river Po. By this point, disease and starvation may have taken hold in Attila's camp, thus hindering his war efforts and potentially contributing to the cessation of invasion. Emperor Valentinian III sent 3 envoys, the high civilian officers Gennadius Avienus and Trigetius, as well as the Bishop of Rome Leo I, who met Attila at Mincio in the vicinity of Mantua and obtained from him the promise that he would withdraw from Italy and negotiate peace with the emperor. Prosper of Aquitaine gives a short description of the historic meeting, but gives all the credit to Leo for the successful negotiation. Priscus reports that superstitious fear of the fate of Alaric gave him pause, as Alaric died shortly after sacking Rome in 410. Italy had suffered from a terrible famine in 451 and her crops were faring little better in 452. Attila's devastating invasion of the plains of northern Italy this year did not improve the harvest. To advance on Rome would have required supplies which were not available in Italy, and taking the city would not have improved Attila's supply situation. Therefore, it was more profitable for Attila to conclude peace and retreat to his homeland. Furthermore, an East Roman force had crossed the Danube under the command of another officer also named Aetius, who had participated in the Council of Chalcedon the previous year, and proceeded to defeat the Huns who had been left behind by Attila to safeguard their home territories. Attila, hence, faced heavy human and natural pressures to retire from Italy without ever setting foot south of the river Po. In the Eastern Roman Empire, Emperor Marcian succeeded Theodosius II, and stopped paying tribute to the Huns. Attila withdrew from Italy to his palace across the Danube, while making plans to strike at Constantinople once more to reclaim tribute. However, he died in the early months of 453. In the midst of the revels, however, he suffered severe bleeding and died. He may have had a nosebleed and choked to death in a stupor. Or he may have succumbed to internal bleeding, possibly due to ruptured esophageal varices. Esophageal varices are dilated veins that form in the lower part of the esophagus, often caused by years of excessive alcohol consumption. They are fragile and can easily rupture, leading to death by hemorrhage. On the following day, when a great part of the morning was spent, the royal attendants suspected some ill and, after a great uproar, broke in the doors. There they found the death of Attila accomplished by an effusion of blood, without any wound, and the girl with downcast face weeping beneath her veil. Then, as is the custom of that race, they plucked out the hair of their heads and made their faces hideous with deep wounds, that the renowned warrior might be mourned, not by effeminate wailings and tears, but by the blood of men. Moreover, a wondrous thing took place in connection with Attila's death. For in a dream some god stood at the side of Marcian, emperor of the East, while he was disquieted about his fierce foe, and showed him the bow of Attila broken in that same night, as if to intimate that the race of Huns owed much to that weapon. His body was placed in the midst of a plain and lay in state in a silken tent as a sight for men's admiration. The best horsemen of the entire tribe of the Huns rode around in circles, after the manner of circus games, in the place to which he had been brought, and told of his deeds in a funeral dirge in the following manner. The chief of the Huns, King Attila, born of his sire Mundiach, lord of bravest tribes, sole possessor of the Scythian and German realms, powers unknown before, captured cities and terrified both empires of the Roman world, and, appeased by their prayers, took annual tribute to save the rest from plunder. And when he had accomplished all this by the favor of fortune, he fell, not by wound of the foe, nor by treachery of friends, but in the midst of his nation at peace, happy in his joy and without sense of pain. Who can rate this as death, when none believes it calls for vengeance? When they had mourned him with such lamentations, a strava, as they call it, was celebrated over his tomb with great reveling. They gave way in turn to the extremes of feeling and displayed funereal grief alternating with joy. Then in the secrecy of night they buried his body in the earth. They bound his coffins, the first with gold, the second with silver and the third with the strength of iron, showing by such means that these three things suited the mightiest of kings: iron because he subdued the nations, gold and silver because he received the honors of both empires. Even in death, Attila's shadow continued to loom large. His empire may have fragmented, but his legend persisted, a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition and the fragility of civilization. Yet, his story also offers a glimpse into the complexities of human nature, where barbarity and brilliance can coexist in a single, enigmatic figure. Attila, the scourge of God, remains a potent reminder of the destructive forces that can arise from the depths of history, but also of the potential for greatness that lies within every human heart. As the sun sets over the vast landscapes that once felt the thundering hooves of Attila's war horses, we are left with more questions than answers. The echoes of Attila's conquests reverberate through time, leaving us to ponder the untold stories hidden within the annals of history. In the tapestry of human existence, Attila's legacy is a thread that binds us to the past, reminding us of the intricate dance between power and destiny. The wind carries whispers of the Huns, and the ancient spirits linger in the silence of these sacred grounds. As we conclude our journey, remember that history's tales are like constellations in the night sky, each telling a story that sparks the imagination. Join us on future expeditions into the folds of time, where the stories of the past come alive, illuminating the corridors of our shared human experience. In the flickering light of knowledge, may we continue to unravel the mysteries that shape who we are and who we aspire to become. From the heart of history, we bid you farewell. This has been Attila the Hun, Scourge of the East. Until we meet again on the shores of time.